In the heart of the Roaring Twenties, a time of jazz, flappers, and speakeasies, one name echoed through the alleyways of Chicago with equal parts fear and fascination: Alphonse Gabriel, Al Capone. Born in Brooklyn, New York, in 1899 to Italian immigrant parents, Capone would grow up to become one of the most notorious gangsters in American history. But his rise to power wasn't just about crime. It was about charisma, brutality, and a business empire built on illegal booze during one of the most turbulent times in U.S. history. Capone's journey into the underworld began early. As a young man in Brooklyn, he fell under the influence of Johnny Torrio, a key figure in the New York criminal underworld who would later play a pivotal role in Capone's career. After getting into trouble in New York, including an incident where he earned the nickname Scarface from a bar fight, Capone was sent to Chicago to lay low and work under Torrio, who had moved there to help run the city's burgeoning criminal enterprise. When Prohibition began in 1920, it created a massive black market for alcohol. Suddenly, bootlegging was big business, and Chicago was one of the most profitable battlegrounds. Torrio saw opportunity and brought Capone deeper into the fold. By the mid-1920s, after Torrio was seriously wounded in an assassination attempt, he handed over control of the Chicago outfit to his protege. At just 26 years old, Al Capone became the new boss. Capone transformed the Chicago outfit into a powerhouse of organized crime. His empire stretched across gambling, prostitution, and most notably, bootlegging. He had a knack for making illegal operations look legitimate and employed thousands of men. He bought off police officers, judges, and city officials to keep his operation running smoothly. Chicago under Capone was a city divided. Speakeasies thrived, and jazz filled the air, but the streets ran with blood. Gang wars between rival factions such as the North Side Gang and Capone's outfit became commonplace. He ruled with a combination of charm and violence, using bribes and bullets to stay on top. Perhaps the most infamous event associated with Capone's reign was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1929. On February 14th, 7 members of a rival gang were lined up against a wall and gunned down by men posing as police officers. Though Capone was in Florida at the time and never directly tied to the massacre, the event shocked the nation and solidified his reputation as a ruthless mob boss. Capone lived lavishly: fine suits, fancy cars, and an extravagant lifestyle that made him a media sensation. He even gave interviews to journalists and portrayed himself as a public benefactor, feeding the poor during the Great Depression and claiming to be a simple businessman meeting public demand for alcohol. However, the federal government had other ideas. As crime spiraled out of control in Chicago, public pressure mounted on the authorities to act. President Herbert Hoover himself demanded Capone be brought down. But pinning him with murder or racketeering charges proved difficult. Capone was careful, and witnesses were often too scared to talk. That's when the government changed tactics. A team led by a young IRS agent named Elliot Ness began focusing not on Capone's crimes, but on his finances. If they couldn't catch him with a smoking gun, they would catch him with unpaid taxes. Ness and his untouchables, so named because they refused to take bribes, began auditing Capone's lifestyle and tracking down witnesses who could testify to his vast, undeclared income. The process took years and involved combing through books, invoices, and even hidden ledgers. Eventually, the feds built a strong enough case to charge Capone with tax evasion. In 1931, Capone was indicted on 22 counts of tax evasion and several other charges. His high-priced lawyers tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the judge rejected it. During the trial, Capone appeared confident, perhaps too confident. But the tide turned quickly. After a 9-day trial, the jury found him guilty on multiple counts. Capone was sentenced to 11 years in federal prison, a fine of $50,000, and back taxes of over $200,000. He first served time in Atlanta, but due to his celebrity status and ability to continue influencing guards, he was later transferred to the infamous Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary in San Francisco Bay. There, isolated from his network and stripped of his power, Capone began to deteriorate. Years of untreated syphilis began to take their toll on his brain. His mental state declined rapidly, and by the time he was released from prison in 1939 for good behavior, he was a shadow of the man who once ruled Chicago. Capone spent his final years at his mansion in Palm Island, Florida, where he lived quietly with his family, plagued by ill health and paranoia. On January 25, 1947, he died of a stroke and pneumonia, aged just 48. Al Capone's story remains one of the most captivating in American criminal history. He wasn't the first gangster, and he certainly wasn't the last, but his name became synonymous with the violent, glamorous, and lawless spirit of Prohibition-era America. What makes Capone's tale so compelling is the contrast. A man who ran soup kitchens for the poor also ordered assassinations. A man who claimed to be a businessman built an empire on extortion and murder. And in the end, it wasn't bullets that brought him down, it was the taxman. His life has inspired countless books, movies, and documentaries. But beyond the pop culture myth lies a deeper truth. Capone's reign exposed the deep cracks in the American justice system, law enforcement, and politics during the 1920s and 30s. His story remains a warning of how organized crime can flourish when the law is weak, the public is desperate, and corruption runs unchecked. From the streets of Chicago to the cells of Alcatraz, Al Capone's story is just one piece of the puzzle. Next up, the rise of Elliot Ness and the fall of organized crime. He built an empire with booze, blood, and bribes. But in the end, it wasn't a rival gangster or the police who brought him down. It was the taxman. Was Al Capone truly a criminal genius, or just the perfect villain for a broken system? The answer may change how you see America's most infamous gangster. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories of history's most infamous figures.